Maren or Will, we can let you into the area where it is kept safe from us. What else do I have to tell you? You have a copy of the Poetry Project newsletter on your chairs. Please take one home. Take one for a friend. Please come back to the project. Very soon we have a reading coming up with Creighton Baxter and Sohail Bhatia on November the 7th, and lots of other fabulous stuff that I've completely forgotten. But it's in your program. And at this point, I think that's everything I have to tell you about, so I will turn things over to my colleague, Maren Arsanios.
Thanks, Kay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Happy Halloween. So I don't usually celebrate Halloween, and this is my first time at the Poetry Projects party, and it's lovely to be here with all of you, loving the costumes. So thinking about Halloween, thinking about the dead, it was hard not to think about what is going on in the world right now. So I'm just going to read some language to sort of not frame the event, but sort of provide some thoughts or something to think about while we listen to our readers. 2024 has been a year of death and bottomless horror. The vampiric, bloodthirsty state of Israel has murdered and continues to murder Palestinians and now Lebanese by the thousands. Most horror movies pale in comparison to the depravity we are witnessing. Our proximity to the dead resurrects our rage, and both our grief and our militancy remind us how critical our task is, now more than ever, to turn what we have into what we need to get what we want. Marx, in the 18 Brumaire, wrote that the tradition of all dead generation weighs like a nightmare on the brains of the living. But are all communiques between the living and the dead only nightmares? Tonight, 4 readers, writers, and performers reanimate the language and the presence of the dead, of deceased writers, of dead laborers, of martyrs. If the work we're doing now is, as Ruth Wilson Gilmore argues, an archaeology of the future, producing and bringing to light the roots of the world we want and deserve, what collaborations are possible between the future and the past that will make the nightmares we're living through now impossible? So let's stand together in this darkness as we do at the Poetry Project every year, Freaks Gathering for Freakoween, and welcome readers and performers tonight whose range of work celebrates what writing does every day to remember, fetishize, mourn, and destroy the forms of language that beat us into apathy and submission. So please join me in welcoming Amy, Mayada, Mary, and Untitled Queen. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to read the bios quickly before turning it over to Mayada. Amy Diaz teaches contemporary literature, culture, and theory at King's College London. Her critical book, Behind Our Backs, Feminized Poetry in Capitalist Abstraction, proposes a new way of reading poetry based on Marx's critique of value. She is the author of several short poetry books, including Laura Parallel and Oh My Love for Gender Abolition, and with Fred Waugh, editor of a poetics anthology, Towards Some Air. Not a Force of Nature is her first full-length collection, and it is available for sale tonight over there if you want a copy. It's a wonderful book. Truly, I deeply loved it and really recommend it. Mary Wong is a writer and editor based in New York. Her journalism has been featured in The Guardian, Guernica, The New Republic, New York Public Radio, and Vogue, among others. Her fiction has also been honored by the Brightport Prize, the Center for Fiction Emerging Writers Fellowship, the Missouri Review, Jeffrey E. Smith Editors Prize, and the Zoetrope All-Story Short Fiction Competition. As an editor, she launched Miscellaneous Files, a series of virtual writer studio visits at Guernica, and edited Out of the Sierra by Victoria Blanco, a nonfiction work published by Coffee House Press and longlisted for the 2025 Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence. She is currently working on a novel and a short story collection. Welcome, Mary. Yes, we can clap. And then, sorry, I have a last bio that Kay sent me, and I have to find it in my emails. Just a second. Kay. Do you have the bio, Kay, at hand? You're finding it, sorry. I am, different pieces got lost in the communication. Okay, here we go. So sorry about this. We have it, Kay. Thank you so much. Okay, yes. Untitled Queen is a Boricua Philippine ex-drag artist residing on the stolen land of Lenape-Hoking called Brooklyn. She tells stories through emotive performances combining poetry, sound, projection, and installation. Welcome, Untitled Queen. Okay, and the last bio, I should have printed this. I'm so sorry. Okay, here we go. Mayada Ibrahim is a literary translator and editor based in Queens, New York, with roots in Khartoum and London. She works between Arabic and English. Her translations have been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and published by Willow's House in South Sudan, Archipelago Books, Dolce Criollo, and 128 Lit. She is the managing editor at Tidal Access Press. Welcome, Mayada, and Mayada will be our first reader.
Hi. Thank you, Miran, for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here. I'll be reading an excerpt from a prose poem. It's a book that's 30 pages long by the Sudanese poet. Her name is Najla At-Tom. And I'll read a little bit in Arabic as well. It's called Alhan al-Sura, or in English, Istidrak. استدرك نقض تدبيره أحيا نقصانه مع انغمار في التفصيل يلحق بأسنانه ما فاته من ذاته لأن المعرفة عضلة داخلية والإدراك شعوبها فهي تخص الجسم بالتحامها فيه دون تداعي تمثيل هذه الشعوب. الإدراك لا يقبل التمثيل والتوسط ومع تعدده الشديد وكثافته يصير منزلة كاملة سديدة من مجموع نقائض تتسق بدقة فائقة مع عظمة الدحض. استدرك أن ينحرف باتجاه صحيح لكنه انحراف على أي حال ويقتضي الانحراف جادة ولكن أحيانا يتحرك من غيرها مستمسكا بطلاقته ومتحررا من معناه. Istidrak tears you apart. Your weaknesses come alive. You search open-mouthed for the missing part of yourself. Istidrak is the tissue and knowledge is the muscle that binds itself to the body without acting on its behalf. There can be no acting on behalf of Istidrak. Its manifest nature makes it a distinct plane. It is one of the many paradoxes at peace with itself. Istidrak is to deviate to the correct path, but to deviate nonetheless. It necessitates taking a path, though sometimes one can wander away from the path, buoyed by the absence of meaning. Istidrak is not a mere step in any one direction. It is a whole new structure that can be grasped, toppled, jumped over. It is made of shattered material, which is not to say useless material. It is momentum. It is not experience that creates momentum, but pure feeling. The structure takes shape within, with kin. It blooms in the image of its creator, the reviver and not the runaway. Istidrak is an adventure, suspended in uncertainty. Its essence is survival within danger, not from danger, which are one and the same, a thread in a web. Danger is the origin of survival. Panic is the origin of safety. The body is the origin of the coffin. Neither is superior to the other, but one may occasionally eclipse the other. At the point of fullness, hunger begins. You begin to lose grasp of what you had known. What you had known begins to lose its shape. Then you exchange places. For this reason, a person crying out for help must not be helped. They're safe from what they want to be rescued from. Don't fall for any irrational behavior, especially from the dead. They are just attempts at resisting change. Ignore the person in distress. Do not show them a way out, or else they lose grasp on what they had begun to understand. But even so, should you intervene, Savior, not all is lost, but it becomes your istidrak and not theirs. Istidrak is a confrontation. It is moving free from a compass, free from any sense of direction, exposed. It's walking out naked into ambiguity, where lust may be shed. Refuge is a perpetual fall. To walk out is to get closer to its raw material. Istidrak is damnation, unless you linger in the confusion and in danger. That's why those who strip away the self are revered. They shed the self and become the line between two types of danger. They not only accept danger but ride its wings. This is the confrontation. They are their own prize. Their departure is nothing more than the contraction of a heart before the valves close. A pulse is a dual movement, requiring both stillness and movement. It is both adjoining and disjoining. Istidrak is sidestepping this opposition. You are always limited if you rely on hope alone. Departure is an event of rupture, a vibration of the surface that allows for breathing, for contact with a virus without gaining immunity from it. Istidrak is leaning on the strength of ignorance. You comprehend istidrak, but not the place, time, and shape of its becoming. You are a cell, a unique cell. Every cell found on the beak of a bird has the capacity to be revolutionary. Each cell has the ability to act. It can peck. It's a mysterious pleasure, this pecking, this suicidal practice. The bird pecks at what appears to be the shell of an egg. To the bird, held in the warm darkness, it is the limit of the universe. The bird pecks at its existence, at the edges of its existence. It threatens its own life. It knows that if it does not get out now, right now, it will die in the warmth. But why get out? What is getting out? What will the bird be outside of its damp universe? There is a calling. The unknowing bird is called to being. It is called to flutter, to fly to the expanse of the horizon. The delicate wall, once the image of strength, has begun to crack. The cell has begun to revolt. B, it starts to peck. B, it takes part in its destruction. Say, it uncovers a secret. The sky ruptures. The horizon softens. The stars tumble closer. The universe seeps away, drop by drop. It emerges from itself. The sky of the egg lies prostrate. Here is the beak, with a flame at its tip. Life, I see life. A pink beak pokes out. My companion doesn't notice. The bird experiences istidrak. It returns to the origins. It goes back to zero, to the beginning always found at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayada. And our next reader is Amy Diaz.
Okay, so I have to introduce my costume first. But I think this is maybe the one place where I don't need to explain this costume, right? Yeah? Okay, thanks. I'm the ghost of language poetry. Right? And it's a really special night for me to be here. I don't live in New York, and thank you. I got heels on too. I didn't really think this through though. The holding the book part. Thank you for that reading, Mayada. It was really beautiful. Thanks. Okay. Oh, and I just want to say thank you so much to everybody at the Poetry Project, to Miren, to Will, to Aidan Farrell, who is over there for bringing books tonight. Thank you. And Aidan is at Future Poem, who published this book for me. So I'm very grateful to them all. And lastly to Kay hey Kay, thank you for supporting my poetry and, for better or worse, encouraging me to write some more poems. I really appreciate your support. Okay. This is going to be funny. That well of tears is mine, with a line from Tom Rayworth. No community is to me as I once caved into you. I said, beware the diversion of the populace who think is nice, maybe, unscrolling after death, and shut out of a more screen time, a common day of breathing, the cacti, the glass windows, and through them our lungs. And through them all ways of unseeing ourselves, and through them nothing in the whole word too secular for you, except old school criminals at the Free Mart fair, the doctors batting away the stultifying air, the bad air, and the heat of the boring poor. Who were once the Free Mart fair, who dares to pull to their lips a satisfactory reel and wresting of the ideal from your arms. You suck, I said, ouch, but wasn't ready to say why. Said, could be worse for some or many, said lower than a vacuum in space, or could be worse for come what may, that well of tears is mine. Oh well, I wasn't ready. No community is to me, as I once said. I said, John, look down at your wet pants and what is coming there. That xenofeminist manifesto, a weight upon your heart. I said, Joan, I said, a bread riot is a bread riot is a bread riot is all that's keeping you from me and all those ways of unfurling ourselves clockwise in the heat, because tyrants never quite complete the closure of the world system, that fullness they desire. Get off, you said. Ouch, but wasn't able to explain. Tuberculosis or common cold. No, you deserve this sick day or that sick day. Go do one day. Wasn't Jane's abortion service awesome to behold? Said, free Winona, hold the phone. Oh well, oh well, oh well. It's the open secret that social classes hide. The whatever singularity, that well of tears is mine. Okay. Oh, thank you. See if I'm gonna, maybe I can move into a slightly more comfortable position. Okay, that's better. These are some sonnets, some love sonnets. I had a dream that you knitted me a scarf, hat, and also that you made me a pair of trousers. Why the rigid mortification, made of stone but still walking? Can we do this without romanticizing anybody? Can anyone who can see the wood for the trees escape a sensation of sovereignty? So much to take writing seriously. Who is my friend and who's my lover? There must be some confusion. I'm walking in those concrete trousers, but I'm taking this to the top, to the senior vice-chancellor, pro-VC, president and principal, and then higher, to the order of St. Cassia, who's fortunately dead like the Lamb of God, and therefore supreme. Oh, Cassandra, I had a dream that we were together again. A previous life fluttering into my heart like books through the window, and with titles like Suffolk Miscellany, The Forager's Calendar, and Queer Saint, who can blame me? Sunshine in the words of the survivor, worrying always about theorizing and never living as we imagine our transformations fleshily, compiling inventories, taxonomies, catalogues and registers, hearing instead of music the words of the complainant, who this time IDs as a butthurt feudal lord. I wish merely to be figured as Brechtian or un-American or any New York school painter, or maybe sensuousness, which inexplicably people still love. That's a cheap shot, I know, but I did wash your dish. Accident eyelid. I had a dream that we did transform, that, Lord, I can change as a commodity waiting to appear, and in the meantime getting laid in a countable way. I should have been accountable in the Empire Diner in Ionia in the 6th century BC, which is where my domestic troubles began. I said my DNA is not self-reproducing. He said that's my money walking home to a happy future, and it's the money I remember the taste of. It seems familiar, I think to myself, and then I think, and then I remember it's my money, but look around. There is no money walking me home. I do not remember the taste of you. I forgot to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's all accountable, we say, but it can't be explained except when you want to own it. If I could remember it all, I'd remember again. Who can't write a sonnet made of Bernadette Fox sonnets? I had a dream we were both on fire and drowning in an envelope of Nightings Outly. But no, look at the full moon accelerating. I'm lost remembering an Alan Davies poem about cocks, cunts, and a line drawing of a woman making a bed, a masterminded cunt who said, "Come save me up. You can have me," she said, steampunk rising from the sheets. You mist of 2020 fuck, you petty pendergrass, you deistic whore, left only to emulate love's obsidian eyes to waltz thy sheets, given it to be gone and to give room, given it to be gone and to give room, to given it room. Transferable Skull, this sonnet is called. It's Halloween themed. When you're walking on a stage, the affirmation of a union. Should living offend the dead, or should I avenge thee? When you're walking on a star, managed not to get pregnant. I lied, I don't know who you are, or how to hear that differently. If Tyburn limbs the vines of this great moving right show, to keep up the payments generationally, but I feel differently, and it does offend me. Suboptimal what? I dreamt I came from around here, buttercup, tall glass, reproducing, nothing I'm proud of, a right-wing policy think tank, a lilac banner, nothing I could forget not well, like acclimatizing to Soylent Green or AC Grayling. Is it true that the people or the public said that? When inverting the arc of history, do nothing that you do not well and wear it, all I would keep for myself, having become the result of a process and having produced results myself, it is right that cortisol is a turnkey operation, and that although these phenomena are not entirely new, acclimatizing to the recommendations of think tanks around here means don't come around here. They're the same loam. If a small increment would make you happier, bro, then I am your cab driver. Knock yourself out. You are policy exchange, a flagrant impersonation of a homing pigeon, but this illusionist ambivalence is the fool you feel yourself to be, and thus to have a temperament, to achieve buy-in, to love oneself, to have a sense of self. I'm willing to believe when all this is said and done, that 3/4 of people who say they have a dead life lived. But it's you I confide in the most when I have a temperature too shrill for the baby that's coming to nest on my knee. My father lies peacefully here. This application has no ideas intrinsic to itself. I might die on that hill, convoked to a state of excitement by something much larger than me. And this is the last sonnet. It's called a sonnet beginning with a line from George Economou's Piers Plowman. For this good God, grant me forgiveness for my worthless living during my entire lifetime. I couldn't be less inventive if I tried. What is the trajectory of the virus now? Eludes me like a task I still must do, to exit this concept, real and imagined, by absconding piss babies, unwise grandpas, slapped then flung laterally on the eyes, nose and mouth. On this day of nationalist fervour, I be not mercy, flying through the trees, dioramas of thinning spirals that slide on water, then return back to us panting and plumper than before, a force of nature splayed there where, scientifically, I cannot be mercy. Okay. And this is called Young Hearts Run Free. Does anyone here know who Amelia de Moldenberg is? Is that? Oh, yeah. Right. This is for you. Right. Okay, whether you want it or not. Okay. my trust misplaced? Is Violet dead? Come to me, babe, on the inside of my hand. Though the earth won't let you go, I heard someone was having a party there in that Vulture article, but no one was celebrating how they could have been happy. I could be. If I could learn to avoid the periphery of the rectangle of grease on a formica table when deadpan Amelia de Moldenberg on chicken shop date tells H he is nothing but a prawn. It's proximity to prawn she wants, and realistically juicy this time. And it's true how white girls stay white girls even when they try. And it's true I wrote a poem titled Sonnet, Suck My Big Cock, then dedicated it to myself like a futures forecaster for big oil. Who's that? Yes, I am a big dick. Look, it's my day of visibility, and it's me who's that slut talking shit on the upright pussy canal. Unaffected and therefore unharmed. A wannabe Candy Staten or Kim Gordon working in a chicken factory, or one that sells oil filters for diesel vehicles. It's me who's that Renault Clio, Toyota Toothbreaker, JCB Edgelord, vehicular, transformed, systematic, a monstrous accomplice just in time, yet unable to come at the same time as you. But it's okay, it's me who's that. So when I first fell in love, I felt invincible, fully caring about them, doing things. I felt I could see myself. I felt I could feel myself fully in my life, doing things like sleeping. When I first fell in love, I felt invincible. I felt I could see myself fully in my life, doing things and fully sleeping around them, caring about them. Okay, I'm just going to finish with this poem called Force of Nature. It's a good night to stay home and work a delivery tread on the yeast farm, then pour oneself into a plaster of Paris model of our own activities. It's a fine night to entertain. Neo-feudalism for indolent boomers, birds in their little nest, hanging on the edge of earth as it is in heaven. But more than that, aside heaven and hell, the quickness deepening a family of dead flies and a bee, storm clouds lit up from the inside, angel hair anthology inscribed outwards to me, the two formalities walking out to dinner, fluoride and cestius, discourse and reason, Samantha at the World's Fair with her stupid husband, godly flourishing. God, I don't care. I want what you just had. You army of people, you logistical shadow. You want it, but you can't need it. You love it, but could never conceive it to do your job, or to provide the material equipment to cancel a city to bring you back to my feet. If life slips easily, then why are you so brittle? Wielding time over me like a natural bromance outdated, struck for embezzlement, forgery, crooked stock jobbing, quick to go blue. I know of you. I look at this and just think, it's not about NAFTA. First there was piecework. That's cheap, isn't it? First there was piecework, then there was wage labour. We should not allow this, then we should bury them. At this point in the story, the inverted world itself, and there was piecework again, imagination and virtuosity, liveness and death, a flashing Ferris wheel catching and throwing us off, once as predictive policing, twice as unconscious bias training, land in Saskatchewan, land in Delhi, as if the earth existed twice, a prism through the hook of a Lucretian swerve, a pretty plainer fold of power folded in upon itself and everything else sublime about you and that you want from women and gays. I don't speak for women, but I am compelled to act as one and make a concept out of it. I am both cottagecore and hope you're keeping safe, resilience discourse and electable bunny boiler, crimped where the stars fell into themselves, a wildfire here, a cup of stevia there, a turgid cat in a car park I picked up by Morrison's, with a feeling of déjà vu for things and their uses I may not divine. Social mobility to what? A mysterious union comes catachrestically to me, says what it is and why I am, but I am no longer what it was then and now. I thought the job would be forever, my leaf blower to my sciatic nerve. I look upon myself. The bar slides down the screen. You look over. The first declension, a downturned ladder to a depth I don't know anymore. Is it you or me cooler now here than it is in there? All wage theft is theft, all proles can be thievers, so we're forms akin to ourselves, no longer recognizable, a nothingness to act on as our activities act on us, catching in antimony creased ideas beneath the skin, a beautiful garden the 1960s, a handsome river the 1970s, a sweet dusky June the 1980s, a proper fleecing the 1990s, city of atomic light, this casual gesture, hot body heat, these pleated hills, a fold of skin, quadruple freedom, a deep green pool of sleep. Behold me, I'm you now. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. That was incredible. And our next reader is Mary Wong. Please welcome Mary Wong.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary. I'm not wearing a Halloween costume. I'm actually pregnant. Thank you, Poetry Project, for having me. And thank you, everyone here and my fellow readers, for allowing me to read a short story. I hope one day to become a good enough writer to write poetry too. But in the meanwhile, I have this short story called Most Chinese People, which is partially inspired by my mom, which means it's a horror story. Okay, not really, but it's about how my mom, when she left China, she had high hopes of ending up in maybe the US or at least the UK. Instead, she ended up in the Netherlands, which is a very small and quiet and cold place where I grew up. So here I go. The roads in this country are cleaner than Guanyin's conscience. So pristine, so traffic-free, as if they haven't been built for driving, but for display. Not even a fly passed by the entire time I'd been waiting, and yet the red light refused to change. I looked left, then right. My heavens, I even stepped on the zebra crossing. But that truck came out of nowhere. Next thing I know, I crashed down 5 meters southwards, my body kicked around like an ungrateful dog. A shame, because I was a beautiful woman. Most tragically, I was now stuck in the Netherlands, a place where the sun never shines and the food tastes like boiled sewage. The streets of Rotterdam empty by 5, as if even the natives have given up on the possibility of fun. Soon after our arrival, immigration officers sent me and my husband to government-sponsored classes in Dutch culture. They taught us how this country has always been so tolerant towards foreigners, how the religious exiles they welcomed contributed to its golden age, the shimmers of which pierced through the bushes of East India. I thought, of course they needed colonies, because who would want to live in this dump? I wanted to go back right after we landed, but that husband of mine didn't agree. Didn't you say our daughter would die breathing China's toxic air? Of course I want her to live, I replied, but does it have to be among cows? Why not go to America, or England at least, with the Zangs? My husband said, going to school for free and seeing doctors that don't need to be bribed, most Chinese people would call it heaven. Yang Guotiang, I said, then why don't you go marry most Chinese people? But sure, even I have to admit that the doctors here are very kind, very professional. By the time my husband and daughter arrived at the hospital, a man in a robe was waiting for them with a cup of canteen coffee. My husband didn't know how to say thank you in Dutch, so he downed the coffee instead. My daughter was with a social worker who had taken her aside and asked whether she understood what had happened. Your mother was in a very severe car accident, she said. My little girl Lan Lan had learned so much more Dutch than her father. But unfortunately, having acquired the skill meant she now had to inform him of my death. Luckily, living as a ghost in the Netherlands wasn't that different from living in the Netherlands while alive. I didn't have many people to speak to either way, and I had already gotten used to a certain aimlessness. After my death, I had hoped that I would at least turn as white as the foreigners here. Unfortunately, I, like the ghosts back home, was invisible. In the mornings, I would sit in our little fridge of an apartment and watch my husband get dressed, make Lan Lan breakfast. He always added too much water to the congee, and without me around, it slowly turned into water. Our daughter, however, slurped it up. Though my dishes were always more exquisite and nutritious, it was her past food our girl ate without complaint. After breakfast, I would follow Lan Lan to school. She'd hop on her bike and cycle through our street. She'd pedal past the pious morning crowd shuffling into the train station and arrive at her school 15 or so minutes later. While I was still alive, I often asked her to take the bus. The Dutch wind was too fierce for her constitution, and cycling was giving her thick calves. But her dad now let her leave in short skirts, sometimes without even wearing a coat. He was a traditional medicine doctor, but lift up the reassuring appearance of his white robe, and all you'll find underneath is a pathological need to please his child. As a dutiful mother, I lingered around for Lan Lan's morning classes. Hovering above the teenagers bent over their desks, I'd keep an eye on who was copying whose homework and who was bikini shopping on their iPhone. Lan Lan did none of those things, since she preferred the company of books to that of her peers. Once satisfied with Lan Lan's academic activities, I'd return to the train station and exit on the Chinatown side to visit my husband's business. His practice sat between a Chinese canteen and a Suriname bakery, so I could just float in between the cracks between the door, alongside wafts of egg tarts and curry chicken. I often told my husband that he went to university to study this, so could he please explain why he was charging Chinese prices to people making Dutch wages? But he couldn't hear me, even if I sometimes managed to break a glass or two. I like to end my days at the port, where I'd hover along the water. I have to admit that the Maas is very beautiful and grand, not too dissimilar to the Pearl River. I could tell by the reflection that my lips were still plump and my figure trim, and it made me sad knowing that people were no longer able to see me. I couldn't believe I had left my country behind and my elderly mother and my facialist just to become a ghost here. But all I could do was close my eyes and listen to the water smashing against the shore. And for a moment, it felt as if I was back in Guangzhou. You'd think that a ghost like me could go anywhere I liked, but every time I tried to hitch a ride on the wind, something this place had no lack of, I found myself getting stuck in the same weather pattern and blown right back. On the first cold morning after my death, Lan Lan hopped on her bike but turned towards the train station. Even though I couldn't read her schedule, she told her pa she was going to school. On the other side of the station, two white girls arrived on their bikes. They looked barely born, even though their earrings were the size of a modest chicken coop. They merged with Lan Lan and led her past the fry stand, the movie theater, and the H&M, one of the two decent clothing stores in the city. They stopped at the skate park, threw their bikes against one bench, and sat down on another. The two girls started unzipping their coats, revealing low V-necks that barely covered their big toefus. Little Lan Lan unzipped her coat too. She was wearing a sweater underneath, but I still shivered watching her. It was almost November. Didn't I tell her white people don't get cold? A few minutes later, two boys arrived, one white, one Turkish. The Turkish one lit up a cigarette because while the Turkish people sold very good quality vegetables, they clearly weren't very good at educating their children. The girl stood up and gave them 3 alternating kisses. I always thought it was strange that the Dutch had such an intimate form of greeting while being so cold in every other part of their being. But this habit was apparently so ingrained that even these long-legged embryos followed in its steps. Lan Lan was last in line and eagerly planted 10,000 smacks on their pimpled cheeks. The boys then plopped down on the bench while those white girls, so young but so flowery already, lowered their jackets even further off of their milk-stained bodies. I yelled, "Lan Lan, what are you doing here with these bad kids?" But all that came out was a breeze, which blew the girls' jackets off completely. Pretending to shiver, the girls slung their bodies towards the boys and landed in an almost perfect pirouette onto their laps. I looked back at my daughter, who was observing this choreography from the side. For once, she seemed as mystified as I was. Coming home that night, I shouted at my husband, "You think the pollution in China was bad? The kids here feed cancer directly into her lungs." But he had no idea because, as usual, he was with patients long after dark, as if he actually made a living wage. By the time he got back, Lan Lan had already returned to her room, pretending to do homework. "Pa, you're home," she called. "I'm home," he confirmed, as if he could avoid saying the wrong thing by saying nothing at all. He then went to the kitchen to stir-fry some tomatoes and eggs. "Yang Guoqiang," I yelled, "can't you see what's happening to our daughter?" He did not hear me, so I continued as he sat down for dinner, as he brushed his teeth, as he laid in bed reading research papers, and then again after he had fallen asleep, hoping to at least penetrate his dreams. But the next morning, he went on to make the same watery congee, as if our daughter's future wasn't in jeopardy. I now had to follow Lan Lan around the clock. Our daughter started skipping school like she skipped rope, jumping in and out of class just enough to avoid getting caught. At the skate park, the two girls were comfortably perched on the boys' laps. Lan Lan mostly stood to the side, though she'd become as chatty as a market woman. I understood that she was an only child who didn't have any family in this country, but did we leave China just for her to become a vagrant? I tried to blow the smoke from the boys' cigarettes in the other direction, but the wind I produced only fanned its flame. So I reoriented myself and blew onto the girls, flipping their hair back and forth on their face like a slap. By mid-December, the boy had started laughing at Lan Lan's jokes. A few days later, he and Lan Lan found a bench on the other side of the park. The boy played songs from his phone. Lan Lan nodded along as if it was real music. He lit cigarette after cigarette, the smoke draping her like a veil. I don't understand what she was doing with him, since at least the white boy looked like he washed his hair once in a while. So I continued to blow at their gatherings, adding droplets of spit for effect. One morning, Lan Lan didn't leave the house at all. I was confused, since she had been seeing the boy every day. But soon after my husband went to work, the doorbell rang. It had started snowing outside, and the boy and Lan Lan were meeting up at home instead. A renewed sense of agency washed over me. This boy was now the foreigner, entering our territory. Lan Lan opened the door and led him to her room. They sat down on her bed, which she had, for once, made up neatly. She put on one of the songs the boy had played and cracked open her windows, even though it was still snowing. The boy took a packet out of his jeans and lit a very crumpled-looking cigarette. The smell it emitted was a bit different than tobacco. It was grassy, fermented, like those counterfeit Marlboros my cousin used to buy. The boy passed the cigarette to Lan Lan, and my daughter, who had been able to resist him the whole time while they were outside, finally gave in. She took a big drag and ping-ponged the air around her mouth. Then she panted it out so forcefully that she blew me, together with a puff of smoke, to the other side of the room. I heard their laughter in the background as I held on to the legs of Lan Lan's desk, trying to ascertain the difference between up and down. I felt dizzy, nauseous, though not in an unpleasant way. The smoke that circulated through the air inflated my hollow body. Euphoria rose through me. I felt like I was disappearing, and I liked it. Suddenly, I was back in Guangzhou. The air was hot and humid, the stink a sign of home. Parents were calling me because I was one of the most in-demand piano teachers in the city. "Miss Zhang," one mother said, "our kids' fingers turned into potato mash after you went abroad." But I was too busy since I had a facial that afternoon and then a dance class and then a dinner with my girlfriends. Besides, I was rich enough already. At the restaurant, we sat around a banquet and spun the glass turntable in the middle to deliver dumplings and rice rolls and chicken feet to each other's seats. Lifting up a cup of tea, I announced, "My sisters, the meal is on me." After all, I was a cultured woman, elegant, educated, accustomed to being served. Not like those Chinese women in the Netherlands who worked as waiters, or worse, as the mail-order brides of men local ladies wouldn't touch. After hearing the happy news, one of my friends started munching the skin off of a chicken foot as if she was tearing off a lover's clothes. But the skin kept growing, slipping and bouncing around the table. This made her pursue the bird with renewed passion, the sound of which entered my ears and raced up my spine. Across the room, Lan Lan and the boy had stuck their tongues down each other's throats, their lips sealed in a tight suck. My daughter had curled up in his lap while the boy's hand was treasure hunting under her shirt. I was still laying against her desk, my nausea swaying me in all directions. But as soon as I laid eyes on this spectacle, I gathered all the strength I had left and swung myself towards their bodies. I used whatever was left of me to circle around the room while a force crescendoed up my core like a tornado. I will not let my daughter get ruined by this libertine. And then the voice of my husband and the crack of a door. Lan Lan, he called, I'm home. I bumped against the wall, turned around. His head peeked through, the shock on his face. The room was covered in snow. 2 windows had shattered onto the floor. The boy was laying on top of Lan Lan, shooting her like a tarp in a typhoon. His hair was covered in ice crystals. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. And our last performer tonight is Untitled Queen. Please welcome her.
I'll just talk a little bit before they're going to do a little set redress. Hi, everyone. I'm Untitled. How are y'all doing tonight? The spirits are with us. I'm so excited to be here. Really honored to be here at the Poetry Project. I want to thank Kay and everybody here who works at Poetry Project. It's a real honor to be here. And I also want to thank my amazing friend and brilliant poet, Kyle Carrero Lopez, who also recommended me for this. I just also want to acknowledge that we are gathered here at the Poetry Project, which is on the stolen and occupied land of the Munsee Lenape. And just to give you some background, I feel like can people see me in between these columns? Okay, maybe like 6 years ago, I first discovered this like playlist on Spotify that was a collection of poets reading their work. And it just sort of transformed my whole experience of poetry. And now it's like the ultimate way that I love to see it, other than seeing it live. Something about recorded is great too, so I can just like keep replaying it and keep hearing their voices. And I just feel like I can really understand the intentionality and the intimacy when I hear a poet reading their own work. It's better than when I read it to myself. They have better voices than I give it to them and myself. But so you'll see me today perform poems read by their authors. When I do poetry performances, it's really the ones I really love to perform. And they're almost like little plays to me, and I just really love transporting it and bringing it out into this world. And I will be performing, they're not all dead, but Mary Ruffley is alive. But for Day of the Dead, I wanted to do their collection of various poems. One's like an essay about death and dying and the ritual and flowers. And so there's an excerpt from My Private Property by Mary Ruffley, and there's a little lecture from her in the beginning. There is a poem by Jim Harrison from his book Returning to Earth. And then there is Carson McCullers, who I love. I also, one thing too about hearing poets and or writers in general, sometimes you never even know what they look like or what they sound like. And when I found that Carson McCullers had audio, she recorded a vinyl album reading excerpts from Member of the Wedding and Heart is the Lonely Hunter, which is incredible. But I didn't realize that she'd also recorded these poems. She's poster girl, Southern Gothic, sad queen. So I was like, yes, this is so good. And I also just feel like, my queer community is everything, and also just how it looks, how it performs, but then also how it sounds, how it speaks. And to hear her voice is pulling from the veil tonight. So it has all that fabulous Southern drawl that you could imagine and dream. And let's see, I think that's all I wanted to say. And also, yes, this is dedicated to all those that we've lost this year. And of course, those that we have lost and continue to lose in Palestine, Lebanon, Sudan, and Congo. My hearts go out to them, and so much love to y'all, and here we go. I'm going to put this over here, and then I'm going to start. Thank you, darling.
On the dead. I never believed for a moment that anyone ever learned a single thing about poetry from hearing lecture. Don't misunderstand me. Lectures are important insofar as they teach us how to talk about poems, but never do they teach us how to write them. Nothing does, except, sometimes, the dead. Why is that, I wondered, when poetry is alive and well insofar as plenty of still beating hearts are writing it? And I came to believe, call me delusional, that no living poet, none, could teach us a single thing about poetry for the simple fact that no living poet has a clue as to what he or she is doing, at least none I have talked to, and I've talked to quite a few. John Ashbery and Billy Collins can't teach you a thing for the simple fact that they are living. Why is that, I wondered. I mean, I really wondered. I think it is because poets are people, no matter what camp they sleep in, who are obsessed with the one thing no one knows anything about, and that would be death. They talk to the dead and have a rapport with the dead, and they write about death as if they had done it, which is utterly ridiculous because they are not dead and never have been and cannot teach us a single thing about death and being dead. And yet, and here's the really weird thing, the minute they become dead, they can teach us everything. Why? Why is that? I think it's because the minute they are dead, all of their poems about death become poems about being alive. And we are alive and can be taught something about that. I mean it. John Ashbery or Billy Collins can teach you nothing about poetry today, September 19th, 2013. But if one of them were to die tomorrow, he could teach you something about poetry on September 20th, 2013. Poets are dead people talking about being alive. It's that simple. People who are alive are not really people because they haven't died, but people who have been alive and then died are the whole kind of people that we want to be our teachers. I can't really explain it, being alive and all.
I no longer believe in the idea of magic, Christ, the self, metal Buddhas, Bibles. A horse is only the space his horseness requires. If I pissed in the woods, would a tree see my ear fall off, and would the ear return to the body on the morning of the third day? Do bow trees ever remember the Buddhas who slept beneath them? I admit that yesterday I built an exploratory altar. Who can squash his delight in incomprehension? So on a piece of old newspaper, I put an earthworm on a maple leaf, the remains of a bluebird after the cat was finished, head and feet, some dog hair, shavings from when we trimmed the horse's hoofs, a snake skin, a stalk of ragweed, a gourd, a lemon, a cedar splinter, a non-symbolic doorknob, a bumblebee with his juice sucked out by a wasp. Before this altar, I invented a doggerel mantra. It is this. It is this. It is this. It is very hard to give birds advice. They are already members of eternity. In their genes, they have both compass and calendar. Their wing bones are hollow. We are surprised by how light a dead bird is. We are each the only world we are going to get. I don't want to die. It would certainly inconvenience my wife and daughters. I am sufficiently young that it would help my publisher unpack his warehouse of books. It would help me stop drinking and lose weight. I could talk to Boris Pasternak. He never saw the film. She was lying back in the rowboat, It was hot. She tickled me with her toes. She picked lily pads. She watched mating dragonflies. How many fish below us? Oh, 100 or so. It would be fun to fall in love with someone. The rower continued his rowing. The fat pet bird I've kept so many years, a crow with a malformed wing tucked against its side, no doubt a vestigial fin. I taught him early to drink from my whiskey or wine glass in the shed, but he prefers wine. He flies only in circles, of course, but when he drinks, he flies in great circles miles wide, preferring bad days with low, cold clouds looking like leper brains. I barely hear his whimps and howls. Oh, Jesus, the pain. Oh, God, let it end. He drags himself through air, mostly landing near a screen door slamming, a baby's cry, a dog's bark, a forest fire, a sleeping coyote, these fabulous memories of Earth.
Select your sorrows if you can. Edit your ironies. Even grieve with guile. Adjust to a world divided, which demands your candid senses stoop to labyrinthine wiles. What natural alchemy lends to the scrubby grocery boy with dirty hair the luster of Apollo, or golden hyacinth's fabled stare? If you must cross the April park, be brisk. Avoid the cadence of the evening, eyes from afar, lest you be held as a security risk. Solicit only the evening star. The world that jibes your tenderness jails your lust, bewildered by the paradox of all your musts, turning from horizon to horizon, noonday to dusk. It may be only you can understand. On a mild sea afternoon of blue and gold, when the sky is the mild blue of a Chinese bowl, the bones of hard cranes, sailors, and the drugstore man beat on the ocean's floor the same saraband.
I'm just going to end with this. It's straight out prose. It's an essay. It's called Observations on the Ground. The planet seen from extremely close up is called the ground. The ground can be made loose by the human hand or by using a small tool held in the human hand, such as a spade, or an even larger tool, such as a shovel, or a variety of machines commonly called heavy equipment. We bury our dead in the ground. Roughly half of the dead are buried in boxes, and half of the dead are buried without boxes. A burying box is an emblem of respect for the dead. We are the only species to so envelop our dead. An earlier, more minimal way to envelop the dead was to wrap them in cloth. Besides burying the dead in the ground, we bury our garbage, also called trash. Man-made mountains of garbage are pushed together using heavy equipment and then pushed down into the ground. The site of this burial is called a landfill. The site of the dead buried in boxes is called a cemetery. In both cases, the ground is being filled. A dead body in a box can be lowered into the ground using heavy equipment, but we do not consider it trash. When the dead are not in boxes and there is a man-made mountain of them, we use heavy equipment to bury them together, like trash. It is estimated that everywhere we walk, we are walking on a piece of trash and the hard, insoluble remains of the dead. Whatever the case, the dead and the garbage are together in the ground where we cannot see them. for we do not relish the sight or smell of them. If we did not go about our bearing, we would be in danger of being overcome. Also buried in the ground are seeds, which we want to see when they emerge from the ground in their later form, that is, as plants. Plants rising from the ground are essential to life. To bury a seed is to plant it. When a seed is planted and not seen again, those who buried it are made sad. The anticipated plant of the wished-upon seed has not materialized. It is dead and remains buried. Heavy equipment is used to plant large expanses of ground with seed. When a whole field of shivering grain rises from the earth, there is a growing sense of happiness among those who buried it. Happiness is also present when a tree emerges, or a tree that will bear fruit or leafy green edible plants that were formerly planted. When flowers arise from the ground, colorful and shapely in an astonishing variety of ways, the living are made especially happy. Not only are flowers admired for their outward beauty of form, their scents are capable of overcoming us and therefore prized. Nothing, it seems, makes the living as happy as a flower. Flowers are among the most anticipated things on earth. For this reason, we separate the flower from the ground and present it to another to hold or to look at. After a while, the flower which has been separated from the ground dies, and we throw it in the trash. Flowers are often planted where the dead are buried in boxes, but these flowers are never cut. That would be horrible. Whoever did such a thing would be considered a thief. Those flowers belong to the dead. Short.
Thank you so, am I on? Yeah, great, fab. Thank you so much, Untitled. And thank you to Mary and Amy and Mayada, and thank you all for coming. Happy Halloween once more. Stay for the remainder of the drinks and have a wonderful night.